Hello, I'm Sam Collins, and I talk about small parts of racing cars.
Yeah. If you know.
Well, the reason it won't be is you won't have the fuel for it at the moment, unless F1 succeeds on what it's trying to do at the moment. And it is doing something really amazing. Nobody's talking about it, and it's really frustrating for me.
Okay.
Because one of the biggest steps of 2026 Formula One, everyone's banging on about the shape of the cars, the aerodynamics, the look of them. The real secret, the really important thing about 2026 Formula One is the fuel. So F1 did an amazing thing, and I have whinged so much on internal meetings about this. F1 banned fossil fuels at the start of this season. That's huge. Formula One has banned. It's not even synthetic. So, you know, sometimes when you haven't finished your meal and you chuck the food in, I don't know if in the States you have it, but in the UK and most of Europe, you have like your food waste bin, your slops bin. And you chuck the food you didn't wear or the stuff that went out of date in the fridge and you forgot about, you know. You put that into the food waste bin, it gets collected separately and goes off to these digesters and they turn it into combustible fuels or stuff like that. And Formula One's regulations say not only are you not allowed to use fossil fuels, you must also only make the fuel from waste product. So it can be industrial waste, agricultural waste, food waste, and in reality, most of the manufacturers are using a combination of all of the above. But what Formula One's essentially done this year, which is really groundbreaking, is said to the world of car manufacturers and the oil companies who are basically paying for it, right, you're not allowed to use fossil fuels, you're not allowed to use dead dinosaurs anymore. That's banned. You've got to get your carbon molecule somewhere else. Oh, and you can't grow anything to do it. You have to make it out of just junk, basically. You have to make it out of rubbish. And the rule's quite an easy way to explain it. You can't make the fuel out of potatoes, but you can make it out of potato peelings. So all the stuff you're chucking away when you're making a dish, that's where your F1 fuel's coming from. So that stuff you're chucking away where you're chopping some vegetables and the bits you throw off when you're top and tail, that's your Formula One fuel of the future. That and maybe when somebody's making some furniture and some sawdust coming off it, that's some fuel source there. Or maybe when the farmer's out cutting the straw and they take the seed off the top and they've got the straw underneath or the little trimmings at the bottom, harvest all that up. Or the grass when the council lawnmower goes through, cuts all those grass cuttings, chuck that in, make a fuel out of that lot. And it's the biggest challenge. It is like such an amazing chemistry and technical challenge. So you've got to get this fuel made of rubbish, put it into the tank of the car, and race against the world's best manufacturers in the most competitive motorsport series in the world. And you've got to do it without using anything you've been using for the last 150 years. Go for it. Have at it. And the rules are fantastic. They're really quite open. And that's why F1's moved from no one's talking about it. There's no fuel flow limit in Formula One anymore. It's an energy flow limit because the fuels being used in the tanks of the cars are not the same to each other. So Ferrari's fuel is made of something. I'm not sure. They won't tell us. Audi's fuel is made of something. Ford's fuel is made of something else. So they're all using different fuels.
So every team, I know Audi's working with BP. They're all working with different.
That's right.
Fuel suppliers. Yeah. Every
they're
team.
All with different fuel suppliers.
Nobody shares.
Some of the fuel suppliers are just stickers on the bodywork, I suspect. I don't know, but some of them certainly in the past have been. So Audi.
Would that explain? Sorry to interrupt. Would that explain the performance differential we're seeing between different Mercedes? Obviously, Mercedes seems to have the engine of the year this year, but even there, amongst their customers, Alpine is not, McLaren is not. We're seeing very different results.
I think that's not so much. I think all of those teams are actually using the same fuel. Alpine, I think all the Mercedes-powered cars are using the same fuel, Mercedes fuel. I think that's more down to the fact, and I was talking to Jolyon Palmer about this a while back on air, and I think the best way to explain it is Mercedes has created a really great computer game, and they know all the tricks and the cheats and the way to use it, but they haven't given the instruction manual to their customer team. So those teams are still trying to find out the best way to use this really fantastic machine, but they haven't got the full sight of all of the instructions. They've only got some of it. They've got the quick start guide, and George Russell and Kimi Antonelli have got the full manual, basically.
Right.
So they've got a bit of an advantage that way. And it's the same. It'll be the same story with Haas and Ferrari and well, the Ford teams will get everything because they're the same essentially. But I think there is a big performance differentiation in the fuel. So what we don't know at the moment is how much is fuel, how much is hybrid system, how much is how they're learning to use the car. We are starting to learn a little bit more about the combustion engine performance figures. That's becoming to emerge when you're looking at the data. You can start seeing who's got a good engine. Mercedes is the best. Who's got a less good engine? Audi are struggling in some areas. Honda are really struggling. I mean, that's not a secret.
Right.
But you are going to start to see a bit of a reshuffle on that. So there is a regulation that allow manufacturers to change their engines, develop their engines during the season. If they are, I think it's 2%, or I forget the percentages, but if they're a certain small percentage behind.
I just saw a quick, like an Instagram post about this by one of the Audi F1 fan accounts this week. Is the ADUO window?
That's right, yeah. That's exactly right. So and there is some speculation, I don't at the moment know the answer. It was supposed to happen after the first 6 races, but obviously we've lost 2 races.
Right.
So will it happen on the point it's supposed to happen, or will it happen after the first 6? So it moves, the goalpost could be moved. I suspect there's discussions going on about it because it's not really anybody's fault what's happened. Well, there's one man responsible, but let's not go there. I think the regulation change won't actually see much difference at first. So Audi will be able to introduce an upgraded power unit. That much is absolutely certain. Ferrari look likely to be able to. Honda 100% will be able to. So we are probably going to see a change in the pecking order because Mercedes won't be able to introduce a new power unit. They're stuck with it. But by the point that the new power unit, the upgraded power units will be introduced, the teams will already be probably on their second power units of the season. So they won't be able to introduce the new one immediately. Okay. They'll have to wait for the life cycle of the second one to run out, or
is it allowed? How many power units per season? I'm trying to remember what that was.
It's up by 1, so depending on which bit, it's 5 essentially, but some bits are lower. But there's a bit more freedom this year than there has been, but that's going to go down again to where it was. But there is a bit more freedom in sort of combustion engines and stuff like that.
And wasn't it? Yeah. Aston. I'm trying to remember. I read this. I think it was Aston Martin that's had some failures. So.
Oh, I mean, they've had so many failures. I mean, they
could run out of engines before the end of the season.
Oh, they will. They will.
Okay.
So they're going to be taking penalties because they're going to have to take engines outside of that allocation. I wouldn't be surprised to see most teams at some point run out.
Okay.
Because then you have the trade-off. It's like, if you introduce a new power unit, do you just take the penalty because the new one is better than the old one?
Oh.
So just take the penalty and improve your performance. So, yeah, you take the pain for one race, but then you can bring in the new one, get better performance down the road. And it may be down to the fact that the new power unit's ready, but you've all only had your new engines for one race. But then you qualify something like 21st at Monaco, then you're like, well, might as well just put the new one in, coast around, and then we've got a fresh power unit which is faster than the next one. So there's going to be some strategy like that. How much the power units are going to change is not clear. I think it's down to each manufacturer. I suspect you're going to see really dramatic changes for, say, Honda. As I understand it, Audi has a problem that will be a little bit harder to solve. So Ferrari have got a big advantage off the start line. You see every race start, Ferrari goes scampering off the line. And
that's the smaller turbo, right?
Because they've got this little tiny turbo.
Right.
Not ideal for a complete performance, but gives them a huge advantage off the start. And actually, that's worth quite a lot. Audi has the opposite. It's got quite a big turbo, more efficient, but they lose 5 places off the start. So that's, you've lost 5 places, all that efficiency gain's gone anyway. So it's that sort of balance. And I think Audi are not going to be able to change in the short term that turbo sizing, because you change the turbo, then you're changing the block, and changing the block, you're changing the heads, the piston, you complete a new engine from scratch. They've been working on this engine for years. So you can't just make a change like that. And then you change like that, you've got to change the fuel. So you're into this whole big, it's not simple upgrades. So yes, you're going to see development. Some manufacturers, I wonder, have they shown what they've fully got? I do wonder if you might see some manufacturers turn it up a little bit as soon as that period has passed, and suddenly these old power units have got 10% more power than they had previously. And I think you might see an element of that. I mean, I
Right.
would do that.
Yeah, sandbagging early on. If you've
Yeah,
got,
absolutely.
particularly if you've maybe already had the pace, you don't really need to show all the cards. You can just run it as
Yeah.
hard as you need to stay out front. Not that I'm
I mean,
suggesting any particular teams.
if you were Mercedes after free practice on Australia and you'd looked and realised that, yeah, you do have a pace advantage, you do have a power unit advantage, would you not go, right, okay, we're going to only run at 8 out of 10 performance
Right.
until everybody else catches us, and then we'll just click it up 2 more notches and pull away again? You're not going to run at 10 and go, oh, and then you get to this performance cut and then goes, oh, right, everybody else can develop apart from us. Everybody else is going to develop past you if you do that. So I'm sure,
Right.
it doesn't take a genius to work out that everybody who isn't really fighting, wind it back a little bit. I mean, if I was Mercedes, I'd certainly be winding it back a bit, keep a bit of performance in your pocket.
Certainly. Yeah.
There's nothing in the rules against it. That's good sport, good engineering.
Looking at their pace so far, it certainly seems like it's their season to lose. But that said, I am thinking about last season. You definitely had this sort of reshuffling of the deck midway through, right? Or was it Silverstone or whatever the race was in the season that people come back and all of a sudden McLaren wasn't quite so the winner, and
That's
Max started to really give them a real run for their money. Frankly, they were.
I think, in my opinion, that was Max's greatest season of F1. He was fantastic. He just came from nowhere and blitzed them all. I thought, what brilliant stuff.
Totally. Yeah. So what I'm wondering is, I suppose how much sandbagging there may have been may answer this. But that said, I'm wondering how much, if there's a shift with this ADUO window, if there's that much of a shift or reshuffling where some of those teams that were really suffering in the front half of the season might come back as, at the very least, stronger midfield, giving a harder run.
I'm certain. So if you start looking at the chassis development, I think actually Ferrari has a stronger chassis than Mercedes. I think it's actually a better car in the corners. Certainly in the low-speed corners, it's got an advantage over Mercedes.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems competitive over longer, but they do lose out on the power. So that's why you have these really great battles earlier in the race, and then Mercedes eventually break away from the Ferraris, and then they get a bit of a gap. I think teams like Alpine, massively underperforming to my mind at the moment. They've got the same engine as Mercedes, so they should be right there, but I think they haven't quite figured it all out and haven't quite got up there. Haas, I think, will move forward significantly because, again, Ferrari look good, so therefore Haas must be good. But they've gone a very different direction to Ferrari from the chassis side. But that's because Toyota are sort of putting money in, and don't underestimate the effect of that Toyota build-up at Haas. Whether Toyota come as a works team, I hope they do, but we haven't seen that yet. And then I think Audi, for example, must improve. That car, I think, is a bit of a downforce weapon, but it's also incredibly complicated, and I don't think they've ironed out all of the little secrets of it yet. But I think James Key has come up with something really, really quite special in terms of that car. But obviously there's power unit issues there as well. The team that's going to make the biggest improvement, easy to predict, is Aston Martin with Honda. They will jump forwards at some point this year, and that car will be a lot more competitive because they'll find all of the little problems and iron out all the little details, and they'll be at the front. McLaren as well. Keep an eye on McLaren. McLaren haven't introduced any, as we talk right now, McLaren hasn't introduced a single car upgrade this season, essentially. They've done nothing. And that's deliberate because of the wind tunnel testing and CFD testing restrictions. So the way Formula One does it, if you win the World Championship, you get the smallest amount of wind tunnel and CFD time on the grid. And they've won it twice in a row. So they've got basically no time in the wind tunnel compared to a team like Alpine who've got the most.
Right.
And Cadillac. And so McLaren can't do all the fiddly little details that you see on the Aston Martin, you're starting to see on the Alpine, even on the Williams. You don't get that on the McLaren because McLaren hasn't had that time in the wind tunnel. So what they decided to do was come up with a really good baseline car, which they clearly have, wait for everybody else to introduce a few developments, have a nosy around them, see if any of those ideas they've seen on other cars correlate with any of the ideas they've had themselves, and then prioritize those ideas for development to try basically copy everybody else's homework and get back, bring a big upgrade package. And as I understand it, that there will be a very big upgrade package for McLaren in Miami. But the thing about that is because we've had 2 races cancelled, the next 2 races are Miami, weird circuit, also sprint weekend, only 1 hour of practice on an unusual circuit in completely new cars, followed by Montreal, similar thing, very strange circuit, sometimes required its own aerodynamic package,
Right.
in weird weather conditions on a weird circuit, and again, it's a sprint weekend. Then you got Monaco coming up. That's
weird.
completely,
Right.
that's its own thing. So everybody's going to arrive in Barcelona in June, the first repeatable race we've had since the season started. And everybody is going to be throwing upgrades at their car in Barcelona. It's going to be wild. Like, it's going to be really, really wild in terms of development race. But those who bring packages in Miami are going to be taking a big gamble because you don't have time to iron out all of those kinks.
Right. So maybe best to wait to Barcelona.
I think the thing is, if you wait till Barcelona, you might wait too long because you may have missed You've missed 3 Grand Prix by that point. That's a lot of points on the table. 2 sprints, 3 Grand Prix. That's a lot of points you're leaving on the table. So you might not be able to wait that long. So what I'm certain of is when we come back to racing in May, it ain't going to be the same as it was for the first 3. You're going to see a different order already. The cars are going to look different. This isn't like the summer break where all the teams are told to go away, sit on the beach and not allowed to even switch on your email. Not been like that. They've had a month of working on the cars, developing the cars, engineering the cars. They're going into the office every day, 7 days a week in some cases, to try to move forwards.
Do you think there's been a lot of critical talk about the new formula in that time? Do you think they're very aware of that, and that's why, as well as the series, trying to contend with adjusting expectations of the fans around this? Because I watch fan press, if you will, right? Like very knowledgeable people of the series, but a lot of negative talk of the formula. And I guess I'm still new to the series, so I'm curious how that goes. Right.
I think I saw some data in the media a few days ago that, there's been negative comments, absolutely. But actually, the engagement and the viewership figures for Formula One are the highest they've ever been. So people are watching this and coming back and watching it more and more again. Personally, I think the racing's been really good. There's a lot of people say, it's artificial. I think if anyone's saying that, they haven't watched racing for very long. And some of the drivers have been criticising it, but I think it's notable that the drivers criticising it are the ones who are probably not winning.
Sure. Well, if you don't have a good ride, I mean, you look at, and not to single him out, but it definitely seems like you have Max having a shot at the title. And clearly, if not, one of the most brilliant drivers of modern times. Having a shot at it when he would drive the wheels off the car as he did last season, versus this year where he's just had such a challenge as far as he doesn't have a competitive car.
But you have to look at it. I mean, it was always going to be a challenge for Red Bull this season, wasn't it?
Right.
And I know Max has been very outspoken about it, and some of the points he's making are valid, and you have to listen to them. But they are ultimately, it's a completely new formula. And if you go back to 2014 or 2022, you had drivers criticising the rules back then as well. Lewis Hamilton wasn't very happy with the 2022 cars. He's come to a car that's a bit more competitive and he's quite enjoying it. Right. And I think the battling on track and that we haven't really seen Max right at the front fighting with the top guys. And I think once he gets to that point, I mean, we don't know, but he might start enjoying it a bit more when the car starts doing what he wants.
Sure.
But we don't know. Maybe he just wants to go off and race GTs and he's enjoying that. But he's picking up quite a lot of penalties, as I understand it, so far in the Nürburgring run. I don't think that's his fault, but I think...
Right. Well, having watched the hybrid era develop at Le Mans for so many years now, and your familiarity with that, I'm curious. We saw the big accident. Was that Bierman recently?
Oh, yeah. Bierman got confused and,
because there was harvesting going on. And I guess the as I understand it, again, just reading in the fan press, it almost seems like that's one of Max's frustrations too, is because he's kind of an all-out. He's enjoying his time at the Nürburgring, right? Because GT3 is all-out pace and talent and commitment, and when you start to deal with harvesting, it's a very different way of going around.
It's a different challenge, but I mean, those Le Mans cars we were talking about, how great it was to watch them. They also did all that harvesting. They did it actually in a less sophisticated way. It's just the racing was close and we didn't notice it so much.
Right.
And I think you have to remember, we've had 3 Grand Prix under these new rules. Ultimately, the teams don't really know what they're doing yet. I mean, yes, they're very clever, and that's massively underselling what they're doing. But anybody, and I come back to the analogy of a really complicated new computer game again, it takes a while to master it.
Right.
And yeah, the teams have got all this simulation data, but you can see up and down the field, the teams are still learning how to get the best out of it. The drivers are still learning how to get the best out of this. They're still learning how to optimize these rules. And I think the same goes for Formula One and the FIA as well. They're still learning how to best display and regulate this new era of Formula One. So I don't think it's really fair to make a judgment on it at this point. But personally, I mean, the Japanese Grand Prix, I think, was just because of the way the qualifying fell through, it wasn't the most thrilling, but it was a complete sellout. And actually, the fan engagement on it was really quite high. China was a brilliant race. My next door neighbor, young family, they've got kids. Their kids were massive football fans until about 6 months ago. And I've got nothing to do with this. I never even mentioned F1 to them. Right. They've become complete F1 obsessives. And I was walking out, and they were just about to go out and walk their dog earlier, and one was wearing a McLaren hat, the dad had a Haas cap, the daughter, I think, had I forget which team, maybe an Alpine hat on it, and the boy had a Formula One magazine with him to go and read while they were off, and during the Chinese Grand Prix, the whole family got up UK time to watch it, which is super early in the morning. And I could hear them. I was home for that one. I wasn't working from base. I was just doing sometimes at home, just watching the onboard cameras, and I could hear them cheering from next door. That battle with the Ferraris and the Mercedes, they were going crazy for it. And I
have to say, the way the lead up has been to Audi joining the grid, right? Like I've been following Sauber now since Audi made the commitment. And covering them in the time I've had my latest website really in the post alpha era, right? But it's been fascinating to watch because I was always to Le Mans every year, missing Father's Day. Like my family was very aware of my commitment to that racing and fairly competent. The players in Le Mans, the star players and whatever. Audi's running a major league team there, and my kids were kind of interested, but not really. And then all of a sudden, my youngest started to was hitting me with more knowledge of the series, it seemed, than I had. And I was like, where did this come from? And I think she caught it on Instagram and just kind of got wrapped in. She's more of a McLaren Piastri fan herself, but right, like that's, you find whomever you like, perhaps football or here in the US with baseball, you just kind of find who your team is and whatever. I'm going to get a little theoretical here, but my only concern there is watching the way NASCAR did it, the early 2000s, it got pop culture crazy relevant, right? And so in the US, NASCAR became this huge thing that unfortunately this series was never really able. When you become fashion relevant like that, ultimately fashion turns away, right? And because you move on to whatever the next thing is. And NASCAR is sort of constricted now to what is a healthy cruising altitude as far as popularity of the series. And I think it was last season when I caught a press release that like Pottery Barn Kids was doing a line of F1 furniture. And I was like, at what point merchandising
is wild. Kit Kat, the money, Kit Kat, the Doritos are now official Formula One brands.
Yeah, and the I don't know, Ocean's 11 style heist of a Kit Kat F1 bar truck.
That happened. That actually happened.
That actually happened.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so I guess I just wonder the Mickey Mouse tie-in. Like, it's on one hand, I love seeing the growth of the series. That was one of my concerns when Audi committed. I was not happy to hear that they had canceled the Le Mans program that they were working on with Porsche and Multimatic. And so it was kind of a downer to hear that. A lot of the hardcore Audi motorsport enthusiasts were not particularly happy that F1, I guess, was taking
I'm going to say something controversial.
Okay.
I wasn't sad that they cancelled that.
No.
Reason being, it's not an Audi.
Right.
It's not an Audi. Audi designed a series with Dallara at times, with others, with Sauber. a gorgeous line of super advanced
Right.
sports prototype sports racing cars. The R8, the R8C, the R8, the R15, the R10, the R18s, all the different versions.
Sure.
Amazing, beautiful Audi racing cars. Each one purely an Audi.
Right.
The LMDH car, not an Audi. They've bought
No,
somebody else's. They bought in an off-the-shelf chassis and added some bits to it. And that's not an Audi. So I was pleased because the Formula One car is an Audi.
Right. No, that's a fair hot take. I see and agree, except for, you have a certain amount of built-in fan base that wants to see them on the grid at Le Mans. It would even.
I mean, I do. I want to see them at Le Mans. I absolutely want to see them at Le Mans, but I want to see them. I mean, within the regulations, I want to see them build an LMH car, a hypercar, like Ferrari have done, like Peugeot have done, like a proper car. Don't cop out and build one of these. It's almost like Formula One had its kit car era.
Right.
Where you could just go to a couple of blokes who'll bend you an aluminium monocoque chassis in some shed, near Heathrow Airport, buy a DFV, a Hewland gearbox, and put some rough bodywork on it and go racing. That was a Formula One car. Kind of switched that around on the head because at least those cars were at least built. Each chassis was their own thing. Now the chassis is not the thing, and the chassis is the heart of a racing car. And this is not. A lot of people say, "Oh, it's just a small component." It's not. The identity of a car goes with the chassis. There's legendary racing cars, and that's because of the chassis. The TWR WSC95 Porsche was, of course, an old Jaguar chassis, and that's what made that car legendary. Was its history, and everyone talks about that car's history, and that's probably the exception because it was a one-off. But if all of those cars of that era, like imagine the great era we're talking about now. The 919, the R18, the Toyota, the Peugeot. Imagine they all used the same chassis. Would it be as exciting? No, of course not.
Probably not.
No, and the cars wouldn't be as magical either.
No, I 100% agree. I think also thinking about it from the fan point of view is an Audi, knowing that like post Dieselgate budgets were not what they were, right? And now throw in electric car development, and you just have this kind of money sieve now. Tariffs in the United States, this money sieve hitting these companies, and so if going to that sort of formula keeps them on the grid versus not on the grid. And would I rather see them racing than not? I would rather see them racing. But I see
your point. But then all these manufacturers went to Formula E. I mean, I'm not a Formula E fan.
Right, yeah.
I should be. I love technology. I love engineering. But Formula E is a series that's so constrained in terms of technology and engineering where it's the one thing that should be promoted.
Sure.
It just leaves me cold because everybody's got the same car. That's not a Citroen or a DS or whatever you want to call it. It's a Dallara or a Spark if you want to call it that.
I remember when I think Opt got in it in season 1 and then Audi joined up not long after. And by the time Audi was done, they developed the power unit, right? That was their own FE05 or whatever it was.
Yeah, they've got their own motor, but the battery's still off the shelf.
Right. And I guess I remember kind of chatting with the teams back then, the Le Mans staff, and it was more kind of like they yearned for an open development formula in Formula E. So it seemed like that might have been a baby step where they had their own power unit. Like, here we go. Then maybe one day batteries too or whatever. But you're saying it's still I haven't really paid attention.
It's still the same. It was meant to be. I sat down with Alejandro Agag even before Formula E had started, when it's just been announced. I sat down and had a chat with him. It wasn't an interview, it was just an informal chat. And I said, look, I've looked at your car and I found it a bit disappointing. It looks a bit, this is the Generation 1 car. It's a bit tepid. It's a bit,
right.
This is just another racing car. You could have been a bit wilder with the design and you could have done something a bit different, which they since did. But he was like, no, I think it looks really futuristic. And I was like, no, it doesn't. It just looks like another racing car with some exposed bits on it. But the original idea was for that series at that point to become a multi-chassis championship. And people were developing chassis to compete in that championship. Toyota was developing a chassis for Formula E. So was Jean-Claude Migeot, who runs the Aerolab company. So Fomstech, that was... They developed a car. Dallara was developing a car and a few others. So you would have actually had a really cool multi-chassis, really exciting championship, but wasn't allowed to go ahead. everybody had to use the same car, and still is the case today. They're still using the same car, and it's a real shame. I think it's a wasted opportunity.
It is. No, I agree. I don't know. The whole market has been so weird against electrics anyway. That's a whole other podcast.
I sound like I'm really anti-electric car tonight, but I'm not. I actually love electric
No,
cars.
I'm not either, actually. I just, it's kind of like the idea of having in the US, a full-size pickup truck or Miata. There's simply a different tool for a different need, right? And it seems like in the US, a lot of people I talk to casually about cars are like, what are your politics? Okay, that's how you feel about electric cars, right? And it gets rather boring when it's just politically driven.
As a very, very public declared liberal, it would surprise none of you that I was the first person in the world to compete in a Nissan Leaf. No one had raced entered one into a motorsport event before me, and I did. I ran a Nissan Leaf in a hill climb and won the class. Actually, it was very, very quick, but slightly unfair that I was running a GT300 specification car basically against standard production things. Beat the Tesla though. That was the Tesla Roadster, the original. But I love electric cars. I just think they have a time and a place.
Sure.
And it's not universal. It's not universal. I think one of the biggest frustrations I have with modern cars at the moment, I'd quite like a new car at the moment. Can't find anything I want. Most of them have too much stuff on them that makes them too heavy. Like the first thing I do, I've got a late Mark 7 Golf, which is my daily driver.
Yeah.
And I drive it on a regular basis, and I thought, you know what you could do to this car to make it better? All Volkswagen needs to do is reduce the sound deadening on it, save probably 50 kilograms on that. That's how much weight that the car manufacturer is putting into just reducing the sound deadening. Take out some of the speakers. Yes, I like listening to music, so does everybody. The sound quality in this car is really good. It's too good. Take out the air conditioning. I live in England. I don't need it. Just chuck that in the bin. There's another probably, I don't know how much, probably 20, 30 kilos off the car. And you start going through all the systems and bits and pieces on the car. It's got those mirrors that fold themselves in and out on a little electric motor. Utterly pointless.
Right.
It just doesn't aid me. If I wanted to fold them back like I used to, reach out the window and fold them back when you're parked. It didn't cause me a problem in the past. Don't need it now. Get rid of all of these giant screens on the dashboard. I don't need these big, heavy... I don't want to drive around with an iPad.
Totally.
I just want some round clocks. Just simplify all of that. And that's why I haven't got a Mark 8 Golf, because it's undrivable with their control system.
Sure. Yeah.
Great engine, great chassis, great transmission, terrible driver control system. And then just lighten some of the body panels a bit more. And suddenly you've taken 100 and something kilos out of the car. You haven't touched the engine, brake, suspension, any of that. You've suddenly got a performance car.
Right.
And it's a great hoot to drive if you do that. And you haven't changed any major system. You just made it lighter and taken out all the crap.
I'll tell you, my wife has an e-tron. I have a Q8 at the moment. Sadly, US, I have two SUVs. I never wanted to become that person. I've become that person. Yeah. But I recently bought a TT Mark 1. I had a friend who was selling it, offered me a great price on it, and we are driving. I mean, the car had been track weaponized. The shifter feels amazing. He's got some great weighting going on it. I need to get a build list from him. It's a bit quicker than a 118 should be, so I'm not sure what all he's done there. The hardcore suspension that I need to relax, because while it was great on track, it beats me up on the road. But my wife and I find ourselves driving it more and more because of just the simplicity and lightness, and like it's just such a great little car. And here this thing is now 25 years old. Right, and I want it more than I want whatever its equivalent would be today.
It's back to the old Lotus philosophy, isn't it? Just add lightness.
Right. Yeah,
that's what car manufacturers need to remember, including Lotus, who kind of sullied themselves by building silly SUVs.
Right,
and
that SUV is silly.
It's their whole product line, apart from the bottom of the range one, is silly. I mean, they need to refine their roots and become Lotus again. But then, Alpine have done the same. Alpine, a car company famous for French lightness, has built an SUV. Don't do it. Just build small, light cars. And I want to go into a car showroom, and I want to go in and say, I want a car. I don't need electric seats. I don't need heated seats. I don't need sat-nav. Get rid of sat-nav. That's one of the first things you've got to get rid of. It's awful. But if you use sat-nav, just get a map. Get a map and think for yourself.
Or just give me. I rented a pickup. Like I don't know. I was traveling somewhere, and I was curious about a full-size GM pickup truck, so I took it because it was in the lot. And that was nothing remarkable about that. It was a big, heavy pig. But the infotainment in it was literally a screen. and I paired my phone to it, and I had CarPlay, and that's all I needed, right? Like it wasn't any brilliant sound. I mean, the sound sounded okay, the speakers were okay, but it didn't have any crazy infotainment system because it just presumed that I would use my phone. And
which in itself is fine, but I think you just need to go even a level simpler. My Golf is just use your phone, and it does have, but it's got buttons that you press.
yes,
And I was looking at some pictures of inside the cockpit of a fighter jet, and then I looked at the controls in the layout of the controls of the Golf, and actually I was like, oh, it's basically the same layout.
yeah.
I mean, less speed and less complicated stuff on there, but actually you've got the same level of switches, the same positioning of switches. Oh, that's actually all. That's all you need.
Right.
You need the information you need and nothing more.
And muscle memory, be able to just find it, not thinking around the screen to find. No, totally agree.
Exactly. I mean, I've got another car outside at the moment, which I've borrowed, and it's got voice activation for various things. And it had like, I couldn't work out how to connect my phone to the car to play some music because it didn't have a button for that. And then I had to say, hey, Vauxhall, and then you have a conversation with the car to make it do what you want.
Right.
And I said, hey, Vauxhall, turn off lane assist. No, I won't do that. You have to do it using this button down there. And then you have to press the button 3 times and make sure you know the funny handshake and make sure you've
unnecessarily complex.
Press up, star, star, down, 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 circle, circle to be able to get it switched off. It's like, stop it. Let me drive the car.
It's funny. I was getting a little hot in some corners in this TT, and I realized I was setting off ESP. It's kind of an annoying level of ESP protection in that Mark 1 TT. But then I realized there's just a button right there in the center of the dash to like just deactivate it. There's no like holding anything down. What's that?
Just buttons. Let's go back to
buttons. Right. And it wasn't like hold it for 30 seconds or whatever. It was literally just boop, it's off.
My Golf has got this thing where it's got that forward-facing collision avoidance system, which on some Volkswagens and some Audis is really aggressive. So it sort of sees a car 2 kilometers down the road and slams on the brakes on full. And, it's like,
and leaves you in the middle of the intersection you're trying to cross. Yeah,
exactly. It just slams on the brakes on its own. You can dial it down on the Golf. I've driven some other VAG group cars and not always so easy to dial it down, or it just readjusts itself back to default. But on the Golf, I've got it set to basically the minimum setting. It's actually a really useful tool. Sometimes it catches you just before you're about to brake anyway, so you're chasing the brake pedal down with your own foot. But there's one road near my house, little country road, and I swear it must be haunted or something because the little alarm starts flashing at the same point, the same seat. There's never anything in front, but it always goes, oh, you're about to drive into something. I'm not. I can see there's nothing there. Unfortunately, it doesn't slam on the brakes. But I've driven another VAG group car down the same road, and it slams on the brake every single time. It's stop it.
Same place.
But then there is a button just to kill it.
Do you have like weirdos in England? By that I mean, like I have this.
I think you're probably talking to one.
Well, I mean, come on, but okay, but what I mean by that is like there's this place we were doing a project in our house. We wanted some old barnwood, and so I drove to like the Sticks, right, where there was an Amish family that has like they deconstruct barns and they sell you the components, right?
Yeah,
really fascinating reuse of materials. But I would get like 3/4 of the way there in the Sticks to get to them, and I would pass this small intersection of this little like 4-building town, and everything, like my phone would be paired with the car and everything would shut down and reset. Like every time I go through this intersection, it would all just crap out. And yeah, so I figured it was like some weirdo who just was running some like crazy level of some sort of signal blocker or like, doesn't want the feds watching him. I don't know. But like it was always that one intersection.
That's strange. I had the Golf before this. It was another Mark 7.
Right.
That shut down once and completely reset itself. I got it, like I parked it up, went home, got into it next morning.
Yeah.
Everything back to factory default, like everything. It was talking to me. It was like German. I was like, what is going on here? And then I realized that I'd noticed it the previous night. I hadn't really considered it. I hadn't made the linkage in my brain. The tree that I was parked next to that night had been struck by lightning. So obviously the electromagnetic field or whatever the lightning did fried
knocked
whatever
it out.
It was, knocked it out and reset it all. I was like, oh, well, that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, this was we drove down there 3 or 4 times during the course of this project, and every time same intersection, same issue. Wild. Anyway, okay. We've been going for a while. May I ask you some Audis? Do you still have time?
Yes, let's go. Let's go Audi questions, and then in about 20 minutes. I've got to go and make my dinner.
Sounds wonderful. I thank you for so much time this evening.
No worries, no
Um,
worries. It's been fun.
yeah, dude. Oh, I mean, it's fantastic. I've been looking forward to this one, to be honest. Anyway, so we start the season. Let me jump back. Last season, mid-season, something happens, right? They're a real team in real mid-pack contention. Hulkenberg, who seems to be strong in the rain all
Yeah,
time, last in general, but certainly last season, gets on the podium in Silverstone. What do you attribute that to?
that was simply good strategy. Good
Okay,
strategy, decent driver who knew what he was doing.
not
Because he had
necessarily the
a
podium,
terrible
but
qualifying.
not necessarily the podium at Silverstone, but I mean more like their mid-season step up from back marker to
I think actually it wasn't them necessarily stepping up because you have to remember, they actively didn't want to. It was beneficial to the Sauber team, or as Audi, to
right.
finish last in the championship.
Okay,
Not financially beneficial. So the higher you finish in the championship, the more money you get, more prize money you get, and it's to the magnitude of tens of millions between the positions of euros. Um, but actually, if you finish last in the championship, you get the most aerodynamic development time. So
okay,
that you get a more sophisticated car from finishing last. And they were in a very unusual situation that Audi as an F1 team didn't exist last year. Yes, it did as
right,
Sauber, but the team, essentially, by doing well, they were penalising themselves as Audi for the next year. And
right,
I get the impression that they didn't actually care to do particularly well in the second half of the season. Yes, they wanted to build themselves up as a good race team. That was the focus. Learn to be a good, cohesive race team, embed people in their positions, make the mistakes when the car's green and black. So when it's
right,
silver and black, it's going to be a good together race team.
right.
So it was all about learning and developing and building. I
Faster
think the
pit
problem is
stops, all of it.
that's exactly it. But I think the problem was when everybody else switched off development on their cars to focus on next year. Audi's development was there, but it was very gradual because they were still developing their wind tunnel processes. So that's why there's some bits coming through the pipeline. And they ended up scooting forwards in the field because everybody else just sort of stopped and went racing and didn't develop the cars. Sauber suddenly got a bit of good advantage. And also, I mean, Silverstone was beginning of the team showing that it knew what it was doing.
Right.
Yeah, that was very smart strategy. And then the
How
team
much of
started.
that? I mean, because we're going to go to Wheatley, if you're okay with it.
That's okay.
So how much of that was Wheatley and his effect on the team?
It's hard to say. I mean, Wheatley is a good person and a good person in the team, but then so is Binotto.
Sure.
They've got a good. I mean, it's Audi. They've always got a good structure at the top.
Right.
You know, if they haven't got Dr. Ulrich, they've got somebody else. They've got Binotto. They've got people like that.
Sure.
And they've
But wasn't
got
Wheatley
that.
running strategy at the circuit? Donato
Not
was
specifically. He wasn't the strategist,
okay.
but he was in charge of that department. So he's like the
Okay.
race manager, if you like. But it's the people working for him that made the strategy. But the strategy was kind of dictated by the fact they had a terrible qualifying. And then the weather went in their favour and they made the right calls at the right moment. And that's how they got up to third. Because you change one. Formula One last year was so tight that if you changed one small variable, the team that was at the back can be at the front.
Right.
And then
It's a
as the
fantastic
conditions,
racing.
it was fantastic racing, yeah. And as the conditions went back away from the Sauber, you saw the Ferrari coming up to the back of him and Hamilton nearly getting on the podium at the end, but then everybody wanted Hulkenberg to get a podium as well, which he
Right.
did just. But if the race, I think, had been 2 laps longer, he'd have lost that position.
Do you think
But
so?
yeah. I mean, the Ferrari was catching so quick.
Yeah.
But it was smart strategy, and that's what Audi needed to see from Sauber, making the right decisions at the right moment and making those smart calls. And it takes you back to, now I forget which year it was, but when Audi won Le Mans with a slower car. And I think it was the second, was it the second year of the R15? The second year of the R15, where Peugeot had a much faster car, but
Yeah.
Audi just blew them all up.
Well, do you remember? Do you ever watch the Truth in 24 documentaries?
Yeah, of course.
And was it the R10 one? So it was the first one. And I just remember the scene that NFL Films did there that was just so, it told the story so blatantly, which was they showed this, it was right after the start. And so they kept going back to this repeat of like the same shot from the top of the stands of the front straight and like the time between the two cars. And so on the first lap, the R10 is kind of
Yeah.
hanging with the Peugeot. And then by like, I think the third or fourth time round, it was painfully off pace, right?
In
Like
fact, it
just,
might actually. That's it. That's the year I think where Audi won it on strategy on pit stops.
right,
They couldn't live with the Peugeots. They just couldn't
right.
get close to the Peugeots. Oh no, that was the year with the Great Rain, wasn't it? In Truth in 24.
It was the great rain there, and then
Yeah.
R15 was not a bot. I mean, you know this more than I do, but the R15 was not a finished car when it first arrived
No.
first year.
It's really weird. I think about all these old Le Mans, they all blend into one, and then someone says, "What about this?" And I was like, "Which year was that?" I mean, I know it was there. I was commentating
Right?
on it, but I can't remember.
Yeah. That was and I think, but they weren't. Audi never had until R18. They didn't have the pace against Peugeot. Like they were, well, as long as they were open top, they were never as fast. Largely, I guess, for that reason alone, right? Like they're not pulling the pace on Mulsanne, and the French made rules that made open tops kind of pointless. So
Exactly. I mean, the R15 had too much drag. Yeah, it was the last year of the R10. The car just wasn't quick enough. Because the R10 by that point was essentially a continuation of the R8, but made around a diesel, but it wasn't fully optimized. The R15 was meant to be fully optimized, but everybody else had moved on and reduced drag, and the car just wasn't fast enough in a straight line. But that last year of the R10, it wasn't quick enough, but it still won the race.
yeah,
And that was good thinking, good strategy, good race management, good racecraft.
right.
And that's what Silverstone with Sauber was about. And that's what Sauber started to show in the second part of last year. The team hasn't really been able to show that this season in the first three races in F1 because of that start problem. They qualify okay. They repeatedly are sort of hovering around the lower part of the top 10 in qualifying. So the car qualifies okay, but then they go off the start and they're P15, P16 because everybody else has just driven past them.
Yeah.
And I think they need to get past that. And then the power unit itself just doesn't seem to have the grunt. That's what's coming through. It just doesn't have the sheer grunt.
Did it strike you as odd? I'm curious about this one. I'm going to be conspiracy theorist on it, but I hope you have technical evidence to blow away the conspiracy theory. At the beginning of the season, you had race 1 and race 2, I believe it was, that only one Audi ran. And they made it through qualifying, they made it through practice sessions, but then they get to the race and it's like, oh, just one's running. And like the same thing happened with McLaren. Like, I think was it
McLaren?
China?
Yeah, McLaren only managed to run one car in Australia because the driver had redesigned it on the lap to the grid
Right.
in first race. Then they both missed out in China.
Maybe
And
that.
I think they finally got two cars on the grid in Japan.
Okay, yeah. So Piastri was clearly intending to run the race in the first round, but what I wondered was with Audi, and then when McLaren did it too in the second round, is there some advantage they're gaining by only running one car?
Not really, no.
Because it all seems so tidy that like we ran the entire race weekend, but now that the Grand Prix is here, only one is running. Sorry.
No, I think that's just
Okay.
I guess the Mercedes HPP team have the engine development team have a mythical character they talk about when things will go wrong. They say Mr. B has come to town.
Okay.
You work out what B stands for and question his parentage, put it that way. And Mr. B has come to town and ruined everything. And I think that's basically what happened with Audi and with McLaren. It was all good until it wasn't. I mean, you have to remember Mercedes as a manufacturer had terrible reliability in testing. And the fact that the Mercedes team has had good reliability-ish at the beginning of this season is pretty impressive, but we expected them to break a lot more. So maybe McLaren have just had the bad luck so far, Alpine to a lesser extent, and Williams, they've a whole different bag, They're a bit behind. I think it was a similar situation with Audi. These are really complicated new cars, and they hadn't quite ironed out all of the gremlins.
Right. And at least they're not Aston Martin. Aston Martin's having a whole other.
I mean, Aston Martin is. I think there were only 2 Gremlins films, weren't they? But Aston Martin has written the trilogy with that.
Right.
I mean, they fed that car after midnight and dropped it in a bath of water.
Right.
It's got so many Gremlins in it. It's the car itself is super advanced. Like, it's really sophisticated design. It just doesn't work.
It's not
That's the problem they've got. But I think that's going to come good.
Do you think All right. So since we're talking about Aston Martin and reliability and similarities between Audi and Aston Martin, can we go back to Wheatley?
Yeah,
Like,
what about, the thing is, I think people make too much of one person in a team.
I'm not giving credit to Wheatley for Audi's. Where I'm going with that is I'm wondering why he left and or where he's going.
I don't know the answer to either of those. I mean, I've heard rumors.
No.
I mean, I'm sure you've seen the same rumors. That
Sure.
maybe there was a falling out in the team. I don't know. Maybe the structure within that team I never quite understood, because you've got Wheatley and Binotto. I mean, why do you have both? And then you've got the advisory board and all the Germans doing whatever it is
Right.
they do. It felt a bit muddled.
If that rumor is true, though, that he didn't work well in that, part of me wonders if it's just he and his family didn't like living in Switzerland. But
I mean, that's a big factor.
there could very well be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if family's not happy, nobody's happy, right? Like that's just how it works. So and he seems like a good family guy. I mean, the way they cut Drive to Survive last season,
like the nicest man in the room, didn't he? And he's a very nice man.
He's the Ted Lasso of Drive to Survive. I mean,
Yeah.
he's the nice guy in the, what do they call it, the Piranha Club or whatever. But and his wife is there. They get along well. There's it just seems so. I could totally see that being his reason for leaving. And if there's an opportunity back in the UK, so going to the rumor of did he not work well under the Binotto, like whatever the hierarchy is there at Audi, it almost seems like the same is true with Newey at Aston, and even worse perhaps because you also have the Strolls that are also very active owners of.
Yeah. I always felt like Adrian Newey was a very strange choice of team principal, even from Adrian Newey's point of view. And I think he wanted it to do it. He wasn't forced into it. He chose to do it.
Right.
That's what he wanted. But I saw a comment from another team personnel member yesterday saying that they didn't believe that Newey understood what was involved in being a team principal. I think that's underselling it. Adrian's a super clever man. But at the same time, my knowledge of Adrian is that he doesn't like all the nonsense, the media stuff, the interviews, having to turn up to all. He doesn't like that. He just wants to get on design cars.
But isn't there quite a parallel there between him and Binotto?
Binotto's an engineer, but I think Binotto's probably takes a step back and isn't getting involved in the development of the car so much because he's got James Key there.
Sure.
James runs his own ship.
But does he like being on? Like, does he want to be the front personality of? It almost seems like he does. That's not really his game. Like he doesn't
appear that
like
he doesn't appear that much. Yeah. Whereas Wheatley was fantastic. You can put him in front of a camera and do all that chatty media stuff. So that's kind of how that was splitting down. So I'll be interested to see how that plays through now with the team. I always thought Alan McNish was going to do all of that stuff, but he hasn't turned up.
Well, you have. Who was it? I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name. The journalist who is on Drive to Survive all the time.
William Buxton.
Yeah. Yeah, it was Will Buxton. Thank you.
As we say, Billy Bob. Billy Bob went to America.
Oh, okay. Yeah, again, still learning the ropes with F1. But I caught in a podcast with him where he was suggesting Alan, and then Montoya was suggesting, I think, Christian Horner.
Yeah. Will's got his own podcast, and he hasn't invited me on yet. So maybe I'm not Hollywood enough for him.
Yeah, perhaps. Who knows how that works, right? Netflix. Yeah, no, but do you think McNish would be an interesting? Do you have any theories on who you would, since they're all making picks, and clearly this is just opinion?
I would pick McNish.
Would you?
Yeah, he's part of the Audi establishment, part of the Audi family. He's been there forever. Everybody likes him.
Great on screen.
Like before, he ran the Formula E team. You know, he's
very savvy around media.
Yeah, brilliant on media. He can do all the talky. Binotto stays in role, James Key stays in role, and I think you've got a nice setup. I don't think that's what's going to happen because he's just been announced as running the junior driver program at the team.
He is. Yeah, that was announced earlier this season before Wheatley left, though.
Yeah. But I mean, Wheatley's departure, I don't know, it was a surprise. There's no obvious place for him to go in F1 unless it was back to Red Bull, but they seem quite okay.
Did I just hear? Well, you're hearing rumors of more people leaving. I don't know what you are, but I'm seeing in the press. I never know what to believe with rumors of the press, though, right? Because like it always seemed like I was close enough to the team at Le Mans that I would kind of know what's up with certain things, and then I would hear rumors or like chatter around the media center and be like, "There's so much bullshit in a lot of these rumors that like." You know, clearly we're all just kind of saying things, right? And like some people know what's up and some people don't. You sort of start listening more to the people who are more consistent with what you're hearing from the manufacturer.
But then there's also the element of just making it up to try and
Oh,
throw stuff,
yeah.
throw mud at the wall to see what
And
sticks, or get someone saying, "No, that's not true. It's this." Oh, thanks for that.
right. Well,
That
and
was
also
always
the
my
Germans are also
classic.
famous for throwing chum in the water too, for like wanting
Yeah,
to. If you think McNish, just using example, not that anybody's doing this. If some German executive thought McNish ought to do it, they might float it to like some German magazine or newspaper, and then it sort of hits, and then how does it land? If it lands well, then it happens. If it doesn't land well, then no, it was always just a bullshit rumor. So
I mean, there's always certain journalists to watch what they say. Unfortunately, one of them, I believe, has retired recently, so we can't track what he says. But certain ones, you'd see what they say. Like, okay, someone's told them that to float that idea out there, and
right,
I've done a bit of that in the past as well,
yeah.
but not with this Audi team. I don't know what's the.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch them. I'm curious how it plays out and which way they go. I like the
I mean,
McNish idea
do they
too.
need a new tape? Do they need one? I mean, that's the question. Do they actually need to change it?
I would argue yes, and here's why. Again, as a F1 noob, so you're going to have much more situational awareness than I will in this assessment. However, I do think media and storytelling and marketing is important to Audi, the brand.
Yes.
And where Wheatley was strong on camera, part of me wondered in the way Netflix was positioning him as sort of a Ted Lasso-esque sort of character,
Yeah.
where obviously Horner's always the villain, right? It is was that on brand with Audi, and from a media impression standpoint, is Horner on brand with Audi? If Lasso, or if the Lasso Wheatley approach was, I don't even, and how much of that Netflix storytelling again is the question, but I'm sure there's somebody at Audi considerate of how these characters look on these platforms and how well they represent the brand. And if Binotto is very good at what he does, but somewhat quiet, not really wanting to be in the media or in the spotlight, then Audi needs somebody who can take that front man sort of position or woman, and which also would play well at Audi, I suspect, telling that story, right? Like if I don't think she's senior enough, I don't know. I don't want to short call her either, right? But if you mentioned Lena earlier, if somebody like that
Yeah.
came to the fore, it would certainly create a lot of headlines and represent the brand in a very interesting way to the marketing staff. And so I do think that's part of the consideration, particularly if Binotto is quite competent at doing it on his own, then that puts less pressure on the person you're putting out there to really be a Dr. Ulrich type, right?
I think that's the key to it. I mean, a Dr. Ulrich type is kind of what's needed there, but they don't have that. Binotto is not that.
Right.
But they could take the Porsche approach or the rumored Audi approach, and there's somebody who's got all of the experience in the world and the right CV for it, and it's Andreas Seidel.
Right.
And he's German, and he fits in that
Yeah.
picture quite neatly, I think. So he would be if I was Audi right now and you wanted to replace Wheatley, Andreas Seidel would be very high on my shopping list.
Right. It'll be fascinating to see how they land. It always is interesting
Yeah.
to theorize on. Yeah, when I heard Montoya say Horner, I was like, I don't think Horner wants that, and I don't think Audi wants that. But who
No,
knows?
I can't imagine Horner going to Audi. I mean, stranger things happen, but it doesn't seem
Right.
likely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway. So how do you think the season's going to go for? I know you would wrap this up and get your dinner. It's gotta be so late. Do you think Audi will? So far, I would say they're underperforming where Sauber was at the end of last season, but they haven't really sorted their car. Is that a fair assessment?
I think they're quicker than Sauber
Okay.
were at the end of last season. In terms of single lap performance and qualifying performance, I think they're actually a step up from where Sauber.
Okay.
In race conditions, they've had so many mishaps and so much silliness, and they've got this start problem. It's kind of ruined them at the beginning of this year. So they've got some clear issues to resolve. They need to upgrade the engine. So there's a bit more power to come, I think. And I think we're going to see Audi become more competitive. But I'll caveat by saying, I think what we're going to see is the gap between front and back of the field get smaller. It's quite big at the moment.
Right.
Even if you subtract Aston Martin, it's still quite big. And I think that's all going to start contracting quite quickly. I think some people are going to be surprised how quickly it contracts.
Okay.
And I think you're going to see the order of things get really muddled. But we're not going to get much clarity on what's going on because I don't think you can draw conclusions from Miami.
Right.
I don't think you can draw conclusions from Montreal. You certainly can't draw conclusions from Monaco because, that's anybody's game. I would say that for me, Ferrari are going to be extremely strong in Monaco. Great, they get off the start, so they're very good in supposed to be corners. I think Ferrari are going to be incredible. Then we've got Spain, where everybody's going to bring new stuff, and it's just going to be chaotic because everything's going to be new. So then we're getting well into the guts of the season. But then the wind tunnel allocations reset in July. So by the time we get to Silverstone, which is probably going to be quite representative if it doesn't rain, but it's Silverstone and it always does, because the only time it doesn't rain is when I'm not there. So I'm going to go to Silverstone and get soggy this year. And I think you're going to start to see an order established by Silverstone. But then things are going to get really weird because the Belgian Grand Prix is going to be the first high-speed track of the year because we've lost Saudi Arabia. And so we get to Spa. Then we're going to start to see what these cars are like at high speed, which we haven't seen yet. We've only seen medium and low-speed circuits. When we get to a full high-speed circuit like Spa, later Monza, and then Las Vegas, those tracks, and Mexico actually, those tracks are going to throw up some really different patterns. So you could see a team that you haven't even considered suddenly do a Force India and streak off into the distance. In fact, that wouldn't surprise me a huge amount. So it's going to be very...
Do you think like a Spa? Sorry to interrupt you. Do you think like you mentioned Audi's strength being its larger turbo and efficiency? Do you think a circuit like Spa will favor that?
Well, it's a circuit where you can overtake, but to be honest, my impression of the Audi is it's a bit of a downforce machine and it's quite draggy.
Okay.
It's quite a high drag car, not a low downforce, low drag car. High downforce, high drag car.
That almost seems at odds with the way you've described their drivetrain.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. Sometimes what you're going to see is the mismatch between drivetrain and chassis. So right now we've got Ferrari, which is a really great low-speed cornering machine. And it's got great punch out the corners, but at high speed it's struggling.
Right.
Whereas you've got the Mercedes, which is working everywhere but low-speed corners where the Ferrari eats it alive.
Right.
So a lot of that is power unit, but then some of that is chassis as well. And I think that's where it gets a bit hard to separate the two out at this point. But that will become much clearer by the time we get to Spa. We'll know what's power unit and what's chassis. Just visually looking at the Audi, it looks like a quite high drag car. I mean, it looks heavy, but it's not. Audi has got something you probably haven't picked up on TV, is when you stand next to these cars and listen to them running, the Audi sounds just utterly different to everything else. Really? You can tell the Audi without looking. It's also louder. It's a louder car. And I actually tested this in the pit lane. It reaches the same peak volume as the other cars pretty much, to the same number of decibels. But it holds its peak volume for longer as it drives past.
Interesting.
So it is a louder car. So there are some different, and that tells you there's something different going on in the exhaust, in how they're managing it. That could be down to the turbo. The cars all have very different sounds.
Right.
And one thing I'm really looking forward to is it's just going and standing and listening to the cars again to see how that's changed. Because I think you can use that to draw some conclusions.
Fascinating. All right. Well, it is late.
Yeah.
You've gone longer than you wanted to go, I'm sure by far. But certainly for your, I would love to catch up sometime, man. Maybe later in the season and see how much of these predictions were true. But
yeah, exactly. We've got a long summer break, so that might be a good time.
There you go. I'd love that.
Yeah, me too.
All right, and maybe we'll get into R8R and all that stuff then too, because I know you're working on some stuff.
We absolutely have to, yeah, because I want to get into that, and got Crocodile Dundee behind me. There you
I noticed the croc. Yeah. Did in Australia?
I didn't. I actually bought that one just a few weeks ago because I got the 143rd of it, and then I just saw the 118th come up, and it wasn't very expensive.
Right.
So I thought, I'll grab that.
I was amazed
it's just
they
such
shipped
a beautiful livery.
Yeah, they shipped it down and let Alan drive it around.
Yeah,
I don't know if it was how close it was to race weekend, but yeah, very cool. Well, really quick before you drop, you have a YouTube channel that's phenomenal. If you want to go super nerdy on
it's
on
very
race
super
cars.
nerdy.
Sam's the Pits, I believe.
Sam's the Pits, yeah, which works in English, but people don't seem to understand outside of the English language, and I mean English.
Right.
But yeah, Sam's the Pits. In it, I just cover stuff that I find interesting.
Right.
It's not. It doesn't really have a purpose. I set up the YouTube channel so I could learn to edit videos, so I could work with the editors and people at F1 a bit more effectively, and just wanted to learn how to do it.
So
I quite enjoy it.
It's no YouTuber face or ridiculous YouTube tricks. It's just really great in-depth knowledge of. You'll find yourself constantly learning things. So totally recommend it. And I think you're working on some some new Audi projects, aren't you?
Yes, very much. You know very well. There's some other bits and pieces coming. I don't have anything particular. As you know, there are some Audi videos in the pipeline. Don't think we're going to see those for at least a month or so, maybe a bit longer. There's a Porsche 919 2014, which is obviously a different car to the 2015 and later car. That's just come out as we're talking. And then there's some Soviet Union stuff, which is the next thing that's going to come along. So the whole point of the channel is to try and tell stories that I feel that either are told wrong repeatedly or just have elements that haven't been told at all.
Sure.
And I think an example was the Citroen World Touring car that a lot of people didn't realize started out life as a World Rally car, and they just kept on gluing bits to and ended up building a racing car.
Yeah.
And that whole development process was quite fun. And then the old rally car was developed in the oldest wind tunnel in motor racing, which was built before the Wright brothers allegedly flew around North Carolina.
Fantastic.
I probably just upset the Smithsonian there.
Perhaps, who cares? They'd be upset. Anyway, I'll wrap this up. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And I do look forward to talking soon.
The Four Rings, If You Know You Know podcast is part of the Weekly Driver podcast series. For more news and features about Audi, visit the Four Rings If You Know You Know website at oooiykyk.com. That's 4OOSIYKYK.com. There you can also subscribe to the Four Rings If You Know You Know Substack newsletter that will keep the latest Audi news and features coming straight to your inbox. Four Rings If You Know You Know is an independent production and not affiliated with the Audi brand. If you know, you know.